I pledge allegiance to the flag
of
the United States of America
and
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have the agenda up on the screen shortly. And are there any changes to the consent agenda board?
The consent agenda?
To the consent agenda? Am I saying that wrong? No.
Well, I was wondering if it would be the board's pleasure to move the action item relating to reaching higher New Hampshire further up on the agenda. I don't think it would be a long discussion, and it would be nice to process that now rather than at the end.
Okay. So John's made a motion to move the Reaching Higher New Hampshire Key Communities Initiative action item to, let's say, after the changes to the agenda. So, any second?
Sure. Second that.
Thank you, Christine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Passes 700. All right, seeing no other changes, and we do not have a student representative report, and let's go ahead and talk about the New Hampshire Key Communities Initiative with Reaching Higher Ed. Or do you need a couple minutes?
Well, one of the members of the public who's here is, originally brought this to the board's attention, and you may want to say something during public comments about it. So just wanted to mention that up. In reaching higher, what they're looking to do is to give a voice to school districts who feel like their issues are integral to what's happening in the state, and hopefully give us an opportunity to share our experiences. And our experiences have been pretty dramatic, I'd say. Not just over this past year, but we've had 2 efforts to dissolve our district. Wouldn't be surprised if it came up again. And, we're feeling the pinch. And so as the state decides what to do about school funding, this is one opportunity to have a voice in that discussion.
Right. If that member of the public wishes to speak, would the board be amenable to getting more information from the representative for the group? Is that okay? All right, we'll take that as consent. Is there a member of the public that wishes to speak to this? He's hoping.
Hello, Alicia Stennerson Jaffrey, but I'm speaking on behalf of Working Together for Jaffrey Ringe, which you all have heard of, I think, at this point. So this came across our, highlight reel, the Board of Working Together, and we talked about it in one of our recent meetings and thought that this could be a really good opportunity for a district. Reaching Higher New Hampshire does a lot of advocacy within the state of New Hampshire. They're pretty highly involved in the legislative, not the process, but doing a lot of legislative advocacy at the state level, with specifically the House of Representatives. And this opportunity seems like something that's not really a big lift for the district, but could potentially offer some positive benefits for us, certainly in being able to share our struggles and our highlights, our successes, as well as some of the difficulties that we experience here in the district in terms of funding, and being able to be sort of a model for Reaching Higher in terms of their advocacy. So that's one benefit. There's also, and you have all the information here, but from what I'm recalling, they do a little bit of work in terms of like data processing and helping to kind of dive into data in districts who decide to partner with them, as well as to do some promotion and advocacy across the state in terms of like articles and newsreels, things like that. So I think that there's a lot of potential benefit that this partnership could offer. Like I said, the lift does not seem very large. I think their goal is really to sort of partner with districts in a supportive way rather than creating more work for districts. I did check out the application. It's pretty straightforward. It's kind of just like, what is your SAU number and what grades do you serve? It was like a Google form that was maybe like 10 to 15 questions. So something that I think could be really beneficial, and I hope that the board agrees.
Yeah, don't go far, Alicia. So, I had two questions I'd like to start off with, if that's okay. I had two areas where this would, so our district has committed to, supporting and being a part of, and advocating with the fair funding, New Hampshire Fair Funding. It is a specifically targeted, program, advocacy program. And they are working with, they're about to meet next week with the Department of Education Commissioner. They're bringing their specific concerns and being, just introducing themselves. But our board has agreed unanimously to support that. And we've also very much been active with the Working Together for Jaffrey and Ringe program. I have two things with this. One is the New Hampshire Fair Funding is asking us for a good deal of data collection to help with their, to help as they consolidate information. And it's a lot of work, and the work will be done by our school district offices. And we've postponed it. They wanted it in December, and we met, and they're postponing it to a more convenient time away from budget season. But to add another organization also looking for data really puts it on our business offices a great deal. And that can be really hard. My second issue is that I'm seeing a real vague advocacy here. I went through the website and I'm not seeing specific areas. I'm seeing all about education. Not all districts are going to agree on what needs to be advocated for. And so I'm nervous about putting our name into a group that most likely is going to give all benefit to us, except we don't actually know completely what the specifics of advocating. To say fair funding, yes, we can do that one. This seems broad to me. So I don't know if any board member would like to speak to that, or if Alicia would like to speak to those concerns. Or add other concerns or add other input.
I support what you say. I've looked it over and it seems to be very open-ended. We don't know what kind of surveys teachers are gonna, or who's has to fill them out. But we have to encourage them to complete surveys that we don't even know what's in the survey, and we don't participate in creating a survey that I don't want. So, I mean, it's to me, it's pretty open-ended and broad-based in terms of specific things that we have to commit to.
Anybody else have input?
Obviously, it seems like an amazing organization. I appreciate that their focus is on public education policy and community engagement, and that they offer resources to the schools. It sounds like they offer resources to the schools, but it's maybe at this moment in time, what we need to focus on is the budget. And maybe this is not our moment to join this organization, is what I'm wondering. I'm not saying we would never join them, but at this point in time, we need to dial in a little bit more.
Yeah, I guess I was kind of thinking the same thing that Christine thought. I think I'm focused on, I think our next big step is passing a budget. And I don't know, I just don't, I think timing is a big thing. I just don't think I have the headspace right now for, another advocacy organization when it probably will help us long term. So I recommend we revisit it. But for the next few months, I don't know. I think we have a lot of work to do here on the budget, so it may just be a timing thing with me anyways.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll chime in by saying these arguments or these thoughts all seem very reasonable. However,
Mhm.
I felt that the board took the same approach when the Conval suit started 5 years ago. And we decided to hold back and kind of regret that we did. I don't think there's a big problem with not joining this now, but I do think it's an opportunity that we're gonna let slip. Yes, we could do it later, but I'm not sure that we will. And I guess the only thing I would say is that we're in an interesting time where public education is under attack on multiple fronts. And, I don't have to enumerate them all. We as board members are pretty well aware of some of the things that have gone on and that are currently under consideration in the legislature. I don't know that much about this group either, but it's a networking activity. Somebody who's reaching out saying, hey, we should do something, and when it comes to gathering information, I think board members, we ought to be able to gather that information ourselves. Shouldn't all be dumped on the business office. If there's things we don't understand or don't have the answers to, a lot of cases, I think we ought to have those answers. So again, I'm not disagreeing with people. There's not a consensus to do this. So, but I am glad it was brought forward. And speaking for myself, and I am a short termer on the board, so that's another thing, right? I don't want to be trying to talk a board into doing something where I'm not even planning to be here after March. But I do think we have to get more activists if we want to try and have a voice at the state level. And I think we're a board that knows a lot about the process. We understand our communities reasonably well. And we could play a role at the state level. Yeah, okay, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, John. I will add, I completely agree with you about the Conval thing, but again, that was a specific advocacy. That was a very specific thing that they were advocating for. So I think it definitely behooves us to be watching Reaching Higher in New Hampshire. Keep it bookmarked and seeing the direction, and then as they come into more specific what they're going to the state with, let's bring that back to the board. Okay. Does that sound reasonable? Okay, thank you. And thank you, Alicia, very much for constantly keeping the bigger picture in front of us. All right. I think we're ready for the superintendent's report.
Well, I was looking forward to a full day of math professional development at the middle and high school level tomorrow, but alas, we have a snow day. So tomorrow, because of the weather, we've called our first snow day, and I believe it will be good I think it'll be good snow for the kids to play out in, and that's exciting. Not as exciting when it's kind of slushy and gross. Icy, things like that. So this is nice to have this be our first. Maybe only, we'll see.
I heard it called cement in the news.
It's gonna be cement.
10 inches of cement.
It's not what not what the radar says I have access to, so we'll see what happens. I spent last Wednesday writing an article for the Ledger, so hopefully we'll see that. Ashley Sorry reached out to me and asked if Jaffrey Ringe would do the state of the schools section of the paper, and so we did that. It's a overview of many things that we're doing in the elementary, middle, high school, and with a vision, with an eye towards some things that we're going to be doing or planning to do in the future. They gave me anywhere between 700 and 1,000 words. I used about 985 or so. And so, assuming they print everything verbatim, then it will give a nice recap of what we've been discussing for toward the end of last year and this year, and thinking about next year as well. Tied with some of that was conversation around STEM education and how we have a nice pathway from pre-K all the way through grade 12 in the area of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And that we are a recent recipient of $12,500, a $12,500 STEM grant from Millipore. So I was excited about that. We applied for that earlier in the year. We finally got all the correct paperwork in that they've requested. And so we will go forward with using that. Many of those items that it's really what it's used for is professional development and implementing new programming that at the middle and high school, which is some of what David talked about as we are going forward with our Ed 306s, the needs that we have, and the continued expansion of that subject matter. Health insurance. We've talked a lot about health insurance. We're going to talk a little bit more about health insurance tonight. We haven't had fun conversations about health insurance. The conversation about $585,000 of having to pay that to healthcare, school care, due to some challenges that the risk pool had with funds. That hasn't sat well, I don't think, for any of us here. We've talked in this very room about, is there anything we can do? What are other places doing? Talk to an attorney, get back to us. Our attorney does inform us that yes, indeed, this is all very legal, that this is something that we need to address, that we have to pay, and there are some options, but for now, we have it in our default budget to pay the balance of it in next year's budget. I'm sure that's still part of our conversation. One step that we did take was, because I think we have to be able to control what we can control. And we are responsible to our local school community, but also the greater community, to mitigate against anything that is going to come at us in the future. For instance, like, could this happen again? What's stopping this from happening again? I don't know. They haven't told us that they've changed any approaches or anything that I'm aware of that's going to make sure that after 2 years of not getting things right, that they're not going to have a third year like that. So Carrie, Sarah from HR, and myself, we met with a broker last week, and so we're starting the process of gathering all our information, getting it from school care, sending it out to this broker organization, one of the largest ones, if not the largest one in New England, and they're going to be going out to find information for us. So I think their goal is that they could give us something actionable by the end of January, which is what we'd have to have. Whether that's a possibility or not, I don't know, because there's a lot of conversations that have to take place for that to happen. Regardless, I think we need to take action and find out what else was there, and to protect ourselves in the future. And one of the questions that we asked was, what's the likelihood of something like this that just took place happening in the various scenarios that they showed us? And, the answer was basically zero. It's not going to take place. That doesn't happen in other types of pools. So we'll talk more about that. as we get more information sent our way. And I think that's all I'll have for this report.
That's great. Thank you so much for doing that. Thank you, guys. The school care issue is unconscionable,
Mhm.
and that, again, nothing is being talked about. There's no recourse. And so thank you for pursuing this as much as we can to find out what options are there. Are there any questions or comments for the superintendent's report? Chris?
Yeah, just quickly, I think when you say actionable, you mean for future, right? Not for the current situation. I guess I was confused
It
about.
can't address the
It
current
can't
situation.
address the current situation.
So
We're
it
talking
can't,
about
but
reducing risk in the future by
that's right.
making a change possibly.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you. That's a good question.
All right, so let's go into the budget recap. And I did ask Ruben earlier to also, if you wouldn't mind, put up a budget calendar that I think Wendy had made of this is what's coming for like the next steps for our budget process. What we've been doing as a quick recap before he goes into more detail is for the month of November, we have had close to 15 hours of budget meetings in the month of November, 14 anyway, and been hearing from the different realms that our budget covers. And so lots and lots of great detail work and mission in that. And so now we get into more of the line item details and kind of delve into each of the areas a little further. So if we look at the calendar, is it?
So this next portion of our conversation is going to be from our website. So one of the concerns last year that was brought forth was we don't know where to find information. Information is not posted, or it's not posted in the right location, or I don't understand how to read something. So we're going to show, first of all, the budget development calendar, but then we're also going to show where we can find some of the documents that we already have that are related to the budget and where others are going to be and when they are going to be there so that you're able to know where to go. So this is for everyone here, anyone who watches this video that later on, anyone on Facebook right now, I see that there are about 15 to 16 individuals watching right there, and certainly on Zoom. And so this right here, if you go to school board on the SAU 47 website, and this is where we spend a lot of our time, agendas, minutes, and videos, and we have them all archived here all the way back several years. But if we go down to calendars underneath school board, we have budget development calendar. Is that the one that you were looking for? Okay. And so this is the 2026-27 budget development calendar. Tonight is the 1st of December. And so we're here starting at 6:30, and we're going to talk about a little bit about all of these areas. We've spent time in November mostly going in deep into where the money is being spent and what's it being spent on and why money is being budgeted in certain areas. This coming Saturday is where we will have a work session starting at 9:30, and that's going to go several hours and still talking about all these areas within the budget. The goal is to have this budget finalized by at least a number that we would use for the warrant article for the proposed budget and for the default budget by the 6th, which was this Saturday. But we certainly could also, if need be, go into that next school board meeting, which isn't listed here because it's a typical school board meeting. I believe that's the 15th of December. We have on the 5th of January, a regular board meeting, not a budget discussion. That said, I think that we will likely have more conversations about warrant articles during that time frame. And then We'll go into later on down the road into the budget and bond hearings in mid-January. That's that black one right there on the 15th. And then a significant date would be early February. Early February in the Pratt Auditorium at 6:30. That would be the first session or the deliberative session. And a month later, we would have a vote at both Ringe and here in this building for the town of Jaffrey for the school, I believe school and town actually at that day on the 10th of March.
Yes. Thank you.
We go back to this spot right here. So again, SIU47.org, you have this bar right across the top. If you were to go to departments and go to business, you'll see budget information. If you click on budget information, it'll bring you to this page that doesn't look like it has much on it, because it doesn't. But on the left-hand side, you do have a bunch of links. And on this left-hand side, this is where you're going to select budget. Well, you can select whatever you'd like to select here, and if you want to look at the past. But if you're talking about our current budget year, you're going to look at budget documents, fiscal year 2026-27. We click on that. There are some items here that will end up eventually getting populated with a voter's guide. The voter's guide has not been decided because we haven't decided what we're going to be putting on the warrant. We have the March voting results. It's December. We don't have that. If we go over to the overview documents, we have apportionment history here, budget history. I'll show you, for instance, what a budget history document would look like. If you were to go to the other years, it would look similar. And you'd see from 2018-19 all the way till now, just some information about what the general fund was, what other funds, were there as well for a total operating budget. And then to last year's total operating budget right there. It also has some percent increases or decreases over the course of the years. We see that we've had a flat budget, a 3% increase, a 2% increase, 1.5% or 1.25% increase in that case. A large increase here. I believe that was 2023-24. Yep. And so forth. And we had that reduction from the previous year there of -3.5%. Organizational charts, some of that we were just looking at, and some of it needs to be adjusted a little bit, but you can see what the general structure is of each department. Tax rate history. Right now, the line item budgets, you would not see this information. That happens, this right here gets populated on the website. All of these get populated just before the January budget hearing. So all of this is very much subject to change right now. Rather than putting information out there and then having someone look at it, and then the following week it say something completely different. We do not populate this part right here, but we do have these exhibits, and this is the stage where we're at right now. So exhibits and other relevant documents. So you can look at budget expenditure change analysis, default, the proposed. So you have a default budget, the proposed budget. So if we were we've looked at these right here. So if we were to look at the budget overview, for instance, I'll go back to the other one in a minute. This is the document that we showed, or we showed clippings of this document earlier. And that in these areas, right here, these are the add-ons that need to take place. Anything in the default budget that is either by law or collective bargaining agreement or some legal reason why we need to have that in there. And we see that this year's default budget is estimated to be about 5.4% higher than the current adopted operating budget. So here's the 2025-26, what we're currently operating in right here. And then this 1.6 million or 1.66 million would be the increase to that for the default budget. That number, or a number that we will land on by Saturday most likely, will be put on as part of the warrant article. You can see here what the major drivers are in that. And so if we were to go back to the default budget expenditure change analysis, that gives you some information. So you look at the salaries and benefits. Salaries and benefits, you'll see that these numbers are quite a bit larger than the rest of the buckets. That's because about 75 to 80% of the budget is going to exist in this area, salary and benefits. You can look over here and see the change, this little arrow, the change from the 2025-26 approved to the 2026-27 default. And so you can see that there's a change of a little over $500,000 in salaries, almost 900,000, about 870,000 in health expenses. And that's some of what we talked about already, about that 585. Now we've paid 139,000 of it. So it's more like 400 and some change, 450, 460,000. And then the increases that are required for next year for the healthcare costs. So that's what that 870,000 includes. It includes 2 buckets of healthcare increases. And you can see that that's a quarter of all the change that takes place. Or that, sorry, it went up by 25%. In the area of special education, that is not salaries and benefits related. Several areas of that are having a decrease. There's some mild increases in some areas. A lot of the, Jen did a great job talking about how the money, the cost can be different from one week to the next week, but in general, if you budget, let's say our experience is, we'll just take the number of 100,000. You might budget 100,000 in an out of district line in the middle school, and that individual who that money represented may move out of district, but someone might move into the elementary school but be out of district, and so that money has to shift. So there's constant shifting that takes place, but you can see overall it's about a 1% increase. Facilities, a 0% increase for the default. And there are some increases at the high school level in the default, and that has a lot to do with the Ed 306s that David talked about when he presented, having to do with business and with STEM. So taking that exercise and going to the proposed budget, you could do the same thing. You can go to the proposed. Everything that's in the default is in the proposed. And so then something else gets added. And this is where the board is going to have that conversation. What is the number that we're going to put forth as a proposed? Is that number going to include certain things? Because we've had some conversations about putting athletics and activities on a warrant. Is that right now? That is not in the default. We've known that for a while. And it's also currently in this, not in this document, it is not in the proposed. So when we see whatever increases there are in the proposed budget, it does not include any of those costs for athletics and activities. The board may decide, because I think that, the conversations are right. Activities and athletics are part of a well-rounded education in any school. It should be in the budget. But we are in an interesting situation where we've had to remove a lot that we really couldn't remove, but now we have to see what we can do to find our way back and to not do it all at once. Also, not in the proposed is about $460,000 around there for 4-year-old pre-K. So right now we have a very robust 4-year-old pre-K program. Most systems do not have that program. It's really a feather in our cap, and it's fantastic that our community has this to offer. It's something that Jaffrey and Ringe are taking seriously, the research out there and the decade plus, maybe 2-decade conversation about the need for early quality, affordable childcare and education, and the importance that it has in a community's, as well as, of course, the learners' well-being and growth. Here, however, you can see when you look at them, these areas about our choices, that there are some areas that some of these full-time equivalents, these numbers, like the assistant superintendent, that 1 FTE, the 1.25 assistant principals, these FTEs are in the default budget. The default budget functions a little bit differently, so we're, those positions, those full-time equivalences are in the default budget because of just other reductions and so forth. But the cost for them would not be in the default budget. Gary, correct me if I'm ever saying anything that's not quite right. Would
That was open.
Yeah, no, she's like, do you really want me to start right now? So would you explain that differently?
Which positions?
I'm looking at the assistant superintendent, because we talked about the need for, someone to work with facilities. We don't have a facilities director right now. The conversation about starting to work on, not this year, fixing, all structures, but starting to work toward getting a more sustainable structure in the SAU. And this was a conversation that the board had around an assistant superintendent. We talked about an assistant superintendent of learning systems that oversaw a variety of aspects. Now, those FTEs are in the default, but not the costs. Is that correct?
I guess it depends on how you look at this.
Okay.
So we're pulling 1.25 FTEs out of the budget.
Hmm.
And of those positions we're pulling out, we've got other FTEs on our choices that we're adding.
Mhm.
So those particular positions may not be in the budget, but we can transfer positions.
Yeah.
So there are ads that we're adding, so it depends on which positions you're talking about that you want to say.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
A little bit. But I think the key here is that these are added costs beyond the default budget. And those costs are for salaries and benefits. We talked about adding the grade 6 teacher. We had a long conversation about how the removal of that position this year, that would be putting something back that was removed. We do have those 1.25 assistant principals already. They are in our system already, but putting that funding back in so that we can maintain that. Not in the default budget was that French teacher at the high school. So that's put right back in here, and not in the default budget is the full-time librarian at Jaffrey Grade School. As you recall, our conversations where we had gone down to 1 at one point in time, and that this was part of using those retention funds, both for the French teacher and the librarian. So those are the major items when it comes to our choices having to do with the proposed budget. Nothing elaborate. Anytime you see 100,000 or 114,000 or 180,000, that, you know, that catches your eye, especially when it's next to 40,000 or 5,000 or something of that nature. But most of those, right here, once again, those assistant principals are already, we have that as part of our system. We've had that as part of our system. They're necessary for our system to continue to flourish. And then, of course, we have our French teacher, we have our librarian, yet their positions are not in the default budget. So we're asking them to go into the proposed budget. So if we look at everything with any of the additions and reductions, that's that 2.55 million increase to the current adopted operating budget. Now, if you recall, our budget that the board approved to go forward last year was 33 million. So this is below that number. It is not climbing back to the 10% that was lost. That said, this also does not bring back in those other items that I talked about. Before we even started this budget process, we had determined that that 1 million, 1.2 million, in addition to a lot of this right here, was going to get us to about $3.5 million. And so part of the reason for having an 8% or 8 1/3% increase in our proposed budget and not bring it in higher, part of the reason for having the warrant article discussion is to provide some choice. Part of what we heard last year also is that, you know, we don't seem to have a choice here sometimes. And so people create their choice. And hopefully, you know, we get some, if we go that direction, hopefully that is something that is helpful to the community. So as what I'm showing this right here, because this is a big number. And we're going into the budgets day of Saturday, where we come and we have a lot of hard, you know, conversations, and we try to whittle it down and discuss what we need and what we, you know, quote unquote, don't need or could get by without. Right now we're getting by. We are in that zone of getting by without in a lot of areas. And that does take its toll. For sustainability purposes, we do need to climb back and start going in the other direction. If this number is too high or not high enough, either way, and the board wants something different, whether it be a number or specific programming, I'd like to turn this over to the conversation right now tonight to have this conversation about what our thoughts are. Because, for instance, if we have a board that is looking at this going, this needs to be, you know, 1% higher than the default, or it needs to be below default, or it needs to be, we need to put athletics and pre-K back into this budget. Like, we need to know that so that we can do everything. We need to, you know, put it into the documents, put it into the system and so forth, make sure that we're ready. If there's a reduction here, we need to start having the conversations in the audience tonight. We have all of our building administrators, some department administrators who oversee aspects of this budget. And so what we say here, the moment we have some direction, we're getting to work. Tomorrow there's some snow. We might have some time to get to work to really analyze what can we reduce? What could we sacrifice in a sense? As you're thinking about that, I'll just go back here. There's a lot of other information here for anyone who's watching, that if you want to look at any part of this, substitute analysis, student enrollment, summary of federal projects, revenues, budget definitions, you might find this to be important to know. It's informative. For instance, equipment. Equipment is defined as something that's costs more than $5,000 per unit. So sometimes we use the word supplies, sometimes we use the word equipment, even though sometimes you think that a supply might be an actual, like we might call it equipment in our everyday life. If it's not 5,000 or more, it's not budgeted as equipment. Okay.
All right. Is anybody on the board prepared to ask questions now or give input now?
In a perfect world, the board would say, you know what, we need this percent over our regular, or this percent over default, or this percent, that type of, if with that much clarity, it is easier to try to figure out where we can take things. I don't think there's, I can say with clarity and accurately that there is no fluff in this budget. These are things that are needed. We're not asking for anything extra. When you look at our current number right here that we got to, and that we're working with right now, and looking at either of those two numbers, you could have a different interpretation of that. And it doesn't seem like it should cost that much. And like, you have to ask yourself, why aren't you getting a whole lot more for 2 million or 2.5 million? And then you see the realities of increase in salaries that need to be paid. And that's again 75 to 80% of your budget, and the healthcare, and those some for unfortunate reasons, and some just because of the increases that take place. And our increases were below the average of the increases this year.
Okay. John, want to kick us off?
Yeah, I just would like to ask for just a little more information about the idea of an assistant superintendent slash facilities director. I know we've been working without a facilities director for this whole year. It'll be a year by the time we come around to the vote, and obviously we have older buildings, and if we let them deteriorate, there's a cost there. But I was wondering if you could just talk a little more about that, because I know it's not just a facilities issue.
Sure. So this was from the November 17th meeting. I believe this is the one, so we're gonna find out if it is. This was a meeting that we talked about structures, what we talked about, the open enrollment. Talked about the importance of continuing to focus on our academics and our behavioral wellness. Those go hand in hand. I think there is some legislation right now in Concord. Someone's trying to get, to cut MTSSB.
Yep.
Folks, these people who want to cut these types of programs, or these types of approaches within your schools, if they don't know what they're doing, they have some warped idea that that behavioral wellness is somehow doing something wrong, I guess, or maybe indoctrinating somebody. It is absolutely essential that we have these types of supports in our school, and they go hand in hand with learning. so we could go in a whole lot deeper than that, but those types of efforts, there are many misguided people who make a lot of sweeping generalizations about very complex systems that support the health and well-being and academic well-being of kids. And they don't know what they're talking about. So this right here, the idea, if you were to look at for the time being of stabilizing the educational systems, the SAU at this point in time, we talked about all the positions that have kind of gone away over a period of time. Curriculum, facilities is the most recent one. We've had communication, that's a big one, perhaps not as, it wasn't a director position, but it was a significant role. And so we talked about also looking at systems around us and how they're structured. And we are in most areas of the SAU, with the exception of the business office, by position anyway, leaner than other areas. So the idea that we are somehow overstaffed in these areas is not accurate. Or at least we're not overly staffed compared to those around us. So we've talked about an assistant superintendent before. Part of that is because as my time here enters my 11th year, and I could be here another 10 years, I could be here another 2 years or whatever, but there does need to be a succession plan afterwards. And that is true not only of my own role, but other roles that we have. We have a lot of longevity in this system, but in order to keep things going, you gotta have a plan of succession afterwards. And we look at our here and now, what are our needs? And then also what are our needs here and now and where we want to go in the future. And we know that anything that, if we're going to continue to be successful and continue to change in a really positive way, we need to focus on curriculum development and alignment all the way through the system, pre-K all the way through 12. And that I would say the ways of, I don't want to say disseminating, but I think that gets the point across. The curriculum and the instruction and the assessment and utilizing the system that's utilizing all of that in order to improve outcomes for kids in all areas is wrapped up in the MTSSA and MTSSB world, that triangle that we showed. We also know that we have a need, and it's tied with that MTSSB, but by law, we have to have someone overseeing McKinney-Vento. We have to have someone overseeing truancy. Those are important. Doesn't mean that this person would do that alone, but that person would make sure that it is done with whatever other support that individual has in order to make sure that we're doing things properly in that area. Right now, those areas, along with the oversight of all custodians, that is disseminated to all the buildings. And so we have many people overseeing these. And while that's great for us, our own growth and learning new processes and new jobs and understanding new aspects of the law and in different parts of the entire system, it's not a sustainable model. And it's not one that it lends itself well toward a good unity of operations, of checks. You could have one school doing something, for instance, differently than another school, and that can cause some challenges sometimes, especially when you're talking about working with personnel. So this idea, John, is that it would be an assistant superintendent of learning systems. So what are the systems that are important, that are essential for a good quality education? And they're both physical systems as well as curriculum and instructional systems. Now, this individual doesn't necessarily need to, would this position, this person would most likely need to be very strong in the area of curriculum, instruction, assessment, have support from in some of these other areas, but would need to have very good managerial skills in the area of facilities and the custodians. We would not expect this person to be a master of all these trades. We have highly skilled custodians, we have highly skilled facilities and grounds workers, and we need someone who can manage budgets, finances, make sure that they have good communication with vendors, strategic planning, long range and short range planning. Those are the skill sets that are required for that type of role right there.
May I ask a
Mhm.
follow-up?
Yeah.
Am I understanding correctly when I hear you talking about multi-tiered systems of support behavior
Mhm.
and multi-tiered systems of support achievement? Is that the right
Academics.
academics?
Yeah.
These are not new goals, obviously, but
No.
these are new approaches to trying to obtain something that schools have always tried to attain.
In
Is that-
short, MTSS, if we just call it MTSS, all it is research-based best practice. That's all it is. It's just the right stuff, what good teachers, what good systems do. And so, but this is what research has said will work to help kids achieve and accomplish their goals. That's all it is. And you're systematizing it. So a teacher who's, I think it's easiest to understand, a teacher who's really successful in a classroom understands where their learners are at. They understand where the holes are that need to be filled, in a sense, from both a behavioral standpoint, but also an academic standpoint. And then they develop plans on how to address those while continuing to still grow that individual individually and in the entire group, because they're learning to be people who are collaborative and existing in the world to communicate with others. And so think about all that person does now. Say, all right, now we have a department that's going to do all of that, and we're all going to work together to make sure that that's happening. Oh, we have not just a department, we have an entire school. An entire school works that way in all the subject areas. And then you do that throughout your entire district as well, at each school. And at each level of increasing that or building that system, there has to be an incredible amount more of strong communication, as well as the attention to detail to make sure that it all continues to have, the system continues to have what it needs in order to improve. And a system having what it needs means teachers get professional development. They have the right curriculum materials. They have the right data systems. They have the time to be able to make decisions like this, to whatever the decisions are to help kids, all those things. But that takes coordination. It doesn't just happen by chance.
When I hear a group like
Mhm.
their funding
Mhm.
talk about our district having high administrative expenditures,
Mhm.
I can't help but think that not even they understand what these staff members are doing in terms of empowering teachers, in terms of creating these systems and managing these systems you're talking about. And one complaint I've heard, not only from some teachers in our district, but in reading online about educational theory and what's troubling school districts in other parts of the state, other parts of the country, constantly hear about teachers who feel like they're left on their own. They don't have if they identify a problem, they're told, well, deal with it.
Mhm.
And they can't deal with it because it disrupts their classrooms and you know, when you talk about an assistant superintendent or assistant principal
Mhm.
or somebody who's running an intensive learning center, are
Mhm.
these the people who make it possible for? I mean, this isn't just extra administration.
No, there's not, I mean, so if you want specifics, like for instance, let's take, Jaffrey Grade School and Ringe Memorial School, the elementary schools. Some elementary schools don't have assistant principals. That's very true. Schools their size, they're bordering on the size, both of them, where you might find it more normal to have an assistant principal. But not all those schools also have intensive learning centers in them. So both schools do. Both schools have schools, basically schools within schools. And so, so I think that that's an important thing to consider when you have that extra support there that's needed. I think also when you look at the data, I'd have to look at it a lot closer, but the quick look at that data from the school funding fairness, I believe showed a percentage of administration and they had a lower percentage for like regular education. What I would suggest is that other schools have higher costs and percentages of money spent on regular education. They have higher per pupil costs and they spend them on lower class sizes or extra support, math specialists, reading specialists, extra interventionists, what have you. We have some of that, but we don't have a very extensive network of that for our regular education. So they may very well have a similar administrative structure that we have. We may not have as robust a regular education structure for the teaching side of things, for the supports that way. That's how I kind of look at it, as that percentage is not necessarily we're overstaffed there. I think we're understaffed in other areas.
If I could go back to or kind of circle back to the assistant superintendent position. And Charlie, I don't want to put you on the spot, so I'll say the sentence and you can shake your head saying I'm out. But you and I had talked about this position years ago. We had brought that assistant superintendent position up for, I think 5 years ago when I started. We had talked about this numerous times, and I always felt like you articulated it really well. Specifically about how the longevity that we have in our leadership and how much they do, and that they've taken on for 11 years and for 16 years. And I thought I don't know if you can remember it, but you articulated really well why we needed to disseminate some of that role to make sure for longevity. I don't know do you remember the wording you used to use? It was just like, this made perfect sense to me. No?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I'm too old for it. I do have a comment though.
Mhm.
My concern is that I believe that one of the roles of the assistant superintendent is succession. All right, and part of the role is to prepare the assistant to take over for the superintendent when the superintendent, for some reason, retires or moves on. So to me, when I look at an assistant, I don't see someone who's responsible for systems and things like that, although they may be responsible for the people who are responsible for those things. All right, but I want my assistant superintendent to be able to step up and talk about HR, talk about what's going on in administration. All right, so I have a little bit different perspective on what an assistant superintendent is. We had assistant superintendent. He was also head of special ed. But those were the roles. When I was superintendent wasn't there, he went to the assistant. Okay. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it had to do with the succession, just making sure that, I think making sure that all the invested information, all of this stored information isn't just in two places. Like this is, it's spread out so that it is sustainable, not just, okay, this one person has all of this. And it really, I think one of the reasons why I really want to make sure that this goes through is just watching what's been happening in Claremont, but where people are scared about whether the districts are able to handle the money that's given. And we have to be able to make sure that we have a sustainable model that spreads the information enough and makes it so transparent and really doesn't put so much strain and stress on a few leaders that simply know everything because they've been here for a long time. Like this has got to be, it's got to be sustainable. We can't have massive turnover at high levels. We can't. Like that's how dangerous things happen in a district. And so we want to really protect the information that we have and the systems that we have in place. I'm not saying it as well as you used to. I'm sorry. When you figure it out. Mhm.
Your superintendent leaves, good luck finding another. All right, you're better off having someone trained and ready to step in. Okay, and that should be the rule, not only of superintendents, but of all administrators is, that they should be training their replacement. So that gives them the freedom to move on without crippling the organization.
And I'll add, not only not crippling the organization, but helping the organization, can guaranteeing as much as you can for it to continue to progress. So I agree entirely. I do think that in a perfect world, what Charlie said would be, I would agree. I think we are in a situation where, like, for instance, we don't have a facilities director, we don't have a curriculum director, we don't have a lot of these things. So this is, while it could evolve over a period of time, this is a way to say, let's take a step in a direction to, that yes, this person would have some skills, be able to oversee, these areas, work hand in hand with the superintendent on a variety of things, learning those, the rest of the organization, as Charlie states, the human resources side of things, the business side of things, the community connections. I mean, community and partnerships and MTSSA and MTSSB, certainly they all go together. These are all bullet points, but they all tie together. Nothing's separate, truly.
Yeah, in a perfect world, our principals would not be the finance directors.
Well, in a perfect world, they would not be the facilities directors and all that kind of stuff. In a perfect
finance
world, you have a
facilities, sorry.
Facilities director
Yeah.
and an assistant superintendent.
Yeah.
By the way, that is the model that every school district in the area has. And we're without either. So getting one would be good. And we have really strong people here.
Yeah.
Who were quite capable.
Okay. Any further comment on the budget? Charlie, go ahead.
Yeah, just have a couple of comments. At the last budget last year, one of the things that David did was he presented how many learners were in each section in these high school classes. I found that very valuable. I wonder if we could get that again this year. Staff analysis, it hasn't been completed for this year, and I'd like to see that. It's been helpful with some analysis. I think that there needs to be some brainstorming with Chris especially, because of a big chunk of my constituents felt that what they were trying to do is send a very strong message relative to their taxes, right? And since then, there's been a revaluation, and we need to understand what that really means. Even though you come out with let's say $1 on the tax rate, that means a person's tax bill is going to be going up $2 instead of $1 because the revaluation doubled most of the property values. So I think that, we need to discuss how we're gonna market this and an apples to apples approach might be a good way to do it. We talk about warrant articles, but an apples to apples might say, you know, if we have a $30 million budget, that did not include, athletics and co-curriculars. It did not include pre-K. So if you strip that out in terms of a presentation, you might be able to say, okay, this is where the big increases are coming from, and give voters a chance from a warrant article perspective to decide whether they want some of the other things. I don't know, just sorry. See. Yeah, that covers about most of it.
Okay. Anyone else have input to offer? Chris, anything?
Looked like Christine was gonna speak, but yeah, I have something.
I'm wondering what the increase is if we added activities and pre-K to the proposed budget.
Just get that whole percentage.
Yeah, let's get the number first. Carrie, do you have those numbers or do you want me to, I mean, I have a slide show with those. But you might.
Yeah.
Have them right there on a spreadsheet.
And then if she can get those, if you could put up the budget sheet that showed that 33, 3. I wanted to see that too, Christine.
You want me to just type
If you said
the
the,
number?
yes, if you said the number, we can add it to this, yes.
So the pre-K was $479,892. And athletics and co-curricular, $634, 384. $634,384.
It's 34, 384.
Yes.
Okay. %.
Do you add that to the adopted or the proposed change?
I added that. I did the 37, so what, no, I did it to the, this proposed. Right here,
Okay.
yeah. So instead of an 8.3, it'll be a 12%, yeah.
It's a pretty rough increase.
Mhm.
And obviously, this is because so much was cut out last year. We have to reintroduce it.
How much would that number, the 34,4 number, be different from last year's proposed budget?
You have last year's proposed right off the.
And that's okay if you don't have it right here,
mean,
because
yeah.
any numbers we're supposed to have in writing.
Not sure what.
The 3 mil was off the proposed, last year's was 3.
33.7.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's about a million over.
Exactly, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
It's, when we had the default budget one year,
I know.
then the following year, the increase was so substantial because
Yeah.
you have to rebuild, you have to put these things back into the budget, and it's a big community effort to rebuild and sustain our schools. And to keep our teachers and to keep our administrators.
Okay, any further? Yes, Chris, go ahead.
And I'll just, again, that's a big increase, and what compounds it is the effect on taxes, the almost 900K less that we get from the state. So in effect, you're really adding that onto it as far as, you have a 12% increase plus another almost $900,000, I think was the latest estimate. So that's something that we need to consider. Is, to me, we should develop a budget that we think that we can get behind and we think will pass, right? That's should be a priority. And Charlie, with regard to, I agree with you, and they would need to be clear and transparent about what the impact on taxes is. To me, what seems to be the most effective method, and we can talk about that, is that, if you have a $400,000 house, it's this. If you have we can talk about it, but I think we need to make sure that that's known. I think in this, I'm just remembering to earlier in the year when I was getting things to my house that had incorrect information on it, as far as what the impact is. So I think we need to make that, widely known as we develop this and stand behind that. And simpler, the better.
But to your point, I think it's very important to highlight the amount of money that has been transferred from the state to local taxpayers.
Absolutely.
Because people need to understand that.
Right. Again, if we came in with a flat budget this year, which I don't think we will, everyone's taxes would still go up, because we're losing almost $1 million from the state, and that trend, will continue, and as long as we don't make any changes, or any changes that would impact that positively. I did have, could I just go on to further comments? We've spent a lot of, my computer locked out. Just give me a second here. Since the last meeting, something that we haven't looked at here, but what the board has is a draft, line by line budget to go through. And I've spent a little bit of time going through that and looking to align it with, what we have here in these documents. And Ruben was absolutely correct. When you go and look at the proposed budget, essentially all of the changes are in salary and benefits. All other line items are essentially flat. So all of the changes are in salary and benefits. It's 75%. So that's really where you want to spend your time looking. I don't think any of us here would argue that those other line items are overfunded, right? We do this every year. We know that and so to come in flat, I think is good. And I imagine that we'll spend the rest of our time talking about positions. And actually, I see all these people here now, and we've had so many discussions that it made me question, as I was going through that budget, exactly what positions we're proposing to come back in to the budget this year. That was confusing for me, so I think it's probably confusing for everybody else. When we say we're restoring positions, what do we mean by that? Restoring positions that were cut or that we brought back with the last budget? So I guess what I would like to do, and I think it would be helpful for me and everybody else, and I think having all of these people here, we could probably do it pretty quickly, is if we could go to, you know, for example, I have the superintendent report from October 6th, where we list the budget cuts and what was brought back.
Mhm.
I would like to just take, you know, 5 minutes and go through with, I guess, my assumptions of what's in the proposed budget, so we can be clear about that. Do you think that's possible if we bring that up?
Sure.
Was that October 6th superintendent's report has,
Nice researching.
yeah, the next slide.
Give the
So,
exact date.
you know, as I look at our, and this will go quickly, as I look at our new proposed budget, I know we're proposing adding the paint and flooring cycle back in. It might not be at that level, but at least-
70,000.
but we're looking at adding that in. Print materials, non-contractual professional development, we're looking at adding some of that back in,
Mhm.
correct?
Yep.
Athletics and co-curriculars, that's not in there, but I think we're on, still, decision needs to be made, but you know, could be a warrant article, could be back in there. And here's where I think, you know, I wasn't as clear. I think, I'm not sure, I guess, summer programs, credit recovery. Is that in our proposed budget this year?
So I'll speak, and then if there's any corrections or more specifics, I'll have some of the principals weigh in on that. At the elementary level, we would not be budgeting for summer programs except for what would be in the default budget for IDEA. Extended school year. And then for the middle high school, they would have some money budgeted for summer programming, credit recovery. And that is by and large, one is it's a good practice, certainly, but we also know that the Ed 306s are talking about learners needing to show competency in specific areas or proficiency in specific areas prior to moving on to the next level. And so not having a mechanism to support individuals who need to, you know, learn certain learning skills or learning goals during the summertime to make sure that they can move on would be poor choice or form on our part.
Yeah, and I remember that discussion that we had about
Yeah.
people having to retake a whole class, you know,
Mhm.
simply for missing one of those learning
Yeah.
goals. So are we saying that's gonna be like partially restored? And I guess where I'm getting at this as I go through these, I'm wondering, should those be on our choices part, or like, what's the criteria if we're gonna be adding things in? I don't know. I guess that's up for discussion as we go through this.
David, do you recall like I mean, I could go to your presentation, but the number that you had shown for the summer programming?
I don't recall off the top of my head. It's a fraction of that. It did not include transportation. Maybe it was $15,000, but
Yeah.
I don't recall. It was in my
Most of
presentation.
that is not budgeted, is back in the budget. It was, I thought 15,000 was the number, but I couldn't
That
remember
sounds
if it was
right, but I don't have it
20.
sitting in front of me.
Yep.
And that is a really important request to add back in. I mean, it's December and I'm still trying to find opportunities for some learners to get through at the high school level. And the new Ed 306 rule at the middle school is a big shift. We're trying to educate families and learners about possibly not moving on to the next grade level, which is a big deal. We've never done that at the middle school level, but the Ed 306 requirement is that we only advance children who have demonstrated proficiency at core learning at all grades. But at the middle school, that means they have to be passing those classes. And we've historically offered a summer program to extend learning. This year, we didn't do that. Now we would potentially have to start retaining some kids at grade level if we don't have something for those kids who don't quite cross the finish line by the end of the year. So it's a significant consideration.
There isn't anything budgeted right now.
Didn't hear you, Carrie, what?
There's nothing budgeted for summer programming at high school right now.
Okay, so maybe for the Saturday work session, we could have kind of more specific, even if it's little numbers, I think the.
I did propose a specific number. I'm not sure why it didn't get in there, but it was in my presentation a couple weeks ago. So we could just, whatever that number was, add it in.
Work session, good, thank you. Good. All right,
Yeah, so field trips, I believe, I looked at that budget and we've added it back in money for field trips. I guess I'm looking right, it's at least a portion of that. I believe I saw that, so that's again, just something that was cut that we're adding back in. When you go to the SAU positions, that director position, I think has moved out. Or I guess, how are we handling that? Does that director position becoming, I guess the job, is it becoming a middle high school position, or is it under the, it's under the,
That's gonna be the assistant superintendent position.
okay, so then the other one is covered in the warrant article, I guess.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
So that's not in the proposed, but it would be in the warrant article. Is that director?
Well,
is-
as
Yeah,
the conversation stands right now, yes.
yep, okay.
Mhm.
Salary adjustments, so I think we're, fully aware of what we're doing with, pre-K. I didn't see any additional teachers, so I'm assuming the JGS and RMS classroom teachers aren't coming back in this proposed budget, right? The staff was flat in the presentation, that's correct, right? No, I'm just talking about the elementary classroom teachers, the one, No. right, okay,
Or the return of the positions that were taken off,
okay,
technology.
right. Yeah, I think that's next on the list here. It's in there eventually. So I think we are proposing to bring back that middle school core teacher. The 3 unified arts elementary teachers, the librarian we brought back and we're planning on keeping, and the 2 technology teachers aren't coming back.
I think it's important to note that, for instance, let's just take a look at the middle school core teacher, $113,751. Again, Carrie, correct me if I'm not speaking correctly, but when we have our approach here is that any open position where we don't have a specific individual in there, we don't have that information, we're budgeting at bachelor's step 1, is that correct?
That's correct.
So we're budgeting at about 20,000, maybe 25,000 lower than this, is that correct? I think bachelor step 1 with
Yeah.
everything.
We're budgeting, it's.
Mhm.
A lot of windows up in here.
Yep.
81,633 is what we're budgeting, that includes benefits.
Yeah. But, and in that file, I didn't see any increase into grade 6. I saw it looked like it was split between 7 and 8.
That's because of how RIFs went last year.
Okay,
Some people that were getting RIFed weren't actually in those positions, they were in other areas. So then transfers took place to actually move people around after.
okay.
And a RIF is, for those who are watching or listening, is a reduction in force.
So the music teacher, I think it's not in the proposed budget, at least from what I could see. CMHS STEM. My understanding is we are bringing that back. And I guess my question was, should it be in is that due to the Ed 306 changes?
Mhm.
And if so, should that be listed in the default?
Mhm. Did we put a portion of that into the default? That's STEM 1. We did with the business.
Yeah, I saw that,
Yeah.
but I didn't see the STEM in there.
I don't recall doing anything additional, the ones that we added or the ones on the overview.
Mhm. I believe we put it in the proposed.
Okay, just something, I guess, something to consider if we are kind
Because
of
we
using
have,
that.
that one's a little trickier because we have a STEM program
Okay,
that meets certain aspects of that. And so, and those individuals are in the default.
okay,
Mhm.
understood. So then, the preschool to grade 12 administration, the 1.25 FTEs that I believe were cut. And weren't brought back with the emergency funding. So I guess I had a question as to like how those are funded now. Like,
Mhm.
are those funded now?
Yes. They, so we ended up kind of a roundabout way, but the choice to keep the elementary whole was that same choice to not bring the facilities director back in. So that facilities director position became, from a financial standpoint, that
use the
position.
funding.
We use that funding for that. We wanted to make sure that we were keeping the academics and the behavioral wellness in a good spot across the entire district, and that was the most important aspect of our mission here. And that we would figure out how to make facilities work for this year.
So we didn't cut the facilities director position. I guess we'll get to it if we could, but okay.
All right, anything further,
All right.
Chris?
I just want to finish it. Sorry.
No, no, you're good.
This will help me understand, because I think when I'm looking at that budget, I want to understand
Mhm.
all the positions that are being added in, and then it becomes
Yep.
kind of simple, right? You
Mhm.
can look at what we had last year,
Mhm.
add in the positions, and the math should work out so that, there's going to be larger increases where we've added it. And I do have some questions on that budget that we can probably figure out another session, is like increases that are, I guess I look at this and I just need to satisfy my curiosity to see, when I see across the board, salary and benefits increases of 10%, 9%, 13.96%, 13.19%. I know some of that's because we're adding staff.
Mhm.
I know some of that is due to the benefits being high, and I guess, go ahead, Carrie.
So I can give you a quick,
Yeah,
I went through your questions before this meeting.
yeah,
In general, sometimes there are shifts with student services. So you'll see increases in one line and decreases in another, and that was what some of happened with the questions that you had. In addition, we have, through one of our collective bargaining agreement, positions that are advancing more than one step next year, so you'll see higher
Okay.
increases along with lane changes for staffs that are moving across lanes. Those are required by contract. Another position had retiree buyback funds in it. So those were generally, on the whole,
okay.
a lot of what,
And that's good to know. I had assumed that it would be something like that, but seeing, like, let's take a category of positions like, high school math, and we're not adding a teacher, but the salary is going up by more than, I guess, an expected percent. And I guess that's what the explanation that I was expecting.
one you had asked about permanent subs, we don't have those. That was for adding professional development back in for staff, along with summer programs that are allowed by contract for one of them, and PLC stipends.
Okay.
Were also, that was a yes. The votes that you had questions on those.
All right, thanks. Yeah, just to finish, for student services, that one middle school special ed teacher, out of district coordinator, 504 coordinator reduced. I'm assuming those aren't coming back, right? And I know this is. And same thing with none of the rest of those. Groundskeeper, custodians, admin, or any of those.
We were able
Proposed budget?
to keep the admin assistant for 1 year this year by paying through the
Retiree buyback.
the prepayment of the retiree buybacks. That funded that exact, very close to exactly that position. That is not in the default, and it is currently not in the proposed.
Okay,
So yes, those last 6 would not be in the proposed as they are written.
all right. Well, I think that's very helpful. I think that, you know, those are essentially our choices, right? All of that, all of those that we went
Mhm.
through, plus what's listed
Yeah.
on there, so.
Can any of those 6 be funded with the grant that we got, the special education grant? Because that can go to personnel, I believe, right?
So we have 2 different types of grants I think we're talking about. None of those could be funded through any MTSSB grant. So the SASS, Safe and Supportive Schools grant. None of those would qualify for that. An IDEA grant. I think that there's a possibility that it is possible, if they're not in the budget, that 1 or 2 of those items from special education could, if the money existed. I don't oversee that grant. I don't know, Jen, if you want to say anything.
The IDA grant does allow for some staffing. We have some staffing already in the IDA. You also have to be really careful that you're not supplanting. So you can't put things in because your general budget doesn't allow it. And additionally, we spend all of our IDA grant already. So to put another, the IDA grant is about $400,000, and to put another $100,000 in for another position is tricky because we spend it on other things that we also need in the district, so.
All right. Sandy, do you have any questions or any?
That is an important
Okay.
thing that we don't talk about much though, Jen, is that we do actually pay for several positions out of title grants. So the Title I grant, you have 2.5 positions paid out of that. You've historically actually had 3 over 3 paid positions paid out of that, but that's getting harder and harder to do. And then several positions 4 right now out of IDEA. But the grant, yeah, 3.325 basically is the traditional, but I think we're down 1. Down to 2. Down to 2. Yeah, that's how much the grant can pay now.
Okay. All right, Chris.
One thing that I forgot to ask Carrie, the remaining school care costs, how are those going to be accounted for in the proposed budget? Is it like split up as if there's like a whole extra payment, or
So
is it a separate line item?
they're split up, so in the default, they were calculated through the default budget, allocated based as a percentage of what the actual expenditures were per line.
Yeah.
So I just did
Okay.
an allocation, and that's how.
That's what it looked
When I
like.
spoke to the auditors, they recommended doing it that way too. So,
So we're not going to see that broken out separately on the budget. It's just going to look like we essentially have an extra.
it's
Extra
blended
payment,
within
yeah.
all of the health insurance lines.
All right.
So it's not one line that's split out. between
Yeah.
All of the health.
500 or however many there are in the budget.
Okay. All right, Judy, did you have anything to add into this?
Yeah, the only thing I want to say is, coming in here new, I can vouch for the fact that they are very frugal here, and they're very careful about what goes into this budget. But if we don't allow the school to have sufficient funding, we're not going to be able to keep and attract students. And then ultimately, for the people concerned about taxes, our taxes will get worse because we will have to go out of district, or we'll have to pay money, as Reuben has said, to other districts to take our students. And we don't like spending the money this year, But if we don't support the school system and keep it, vibrant and, operational and just a place people want to go to school, ultimately our tax expenses will go wild. So that's all I wanted to comment.
All right, anything further from the board before we open it up to public comments?
I'm good.
All right. Anything further for the budget recap before we open it up to public comments?
Just that we knew this going into this was gonna be a little more of a challenging year, and we just have to keep on having conversations and zeroing in on what it is that we can do.
Yeah.
And then the best approaches given the certain areas that we do not have, within our default budget.
And then
It's
on,
difficult having a default budget 5% higher than an operating, but that's a tough place to start.
and then on Saturday, I believe the board is going to be really finalizing whether we want to include the athletic program and or the pre-K into the proposed budget or keep it as warrant articles. And I think there's a lot of mixed feelings, so we'll have some good conversation about that probably then. All right, so are we ready to open up to public comments?
I just had one question,
Mm.
and maybe this is for Charlie. The question you had, I wrote it down. I think you said a teacher analysis that you were looking for.
Staffing.
Staffing,
Staff analysis, yeah.
Right now will be posted.
the staffing analysis.
Yeah, it wasn't posted for that. That's,
Okay.
Was actually in the middle of writing the email to have it posted.
Oh, okay.
I was right in the middle of
Okay.
writing the email to have it posted on the website because it is done.
Okay, so we have it. All right. Yeah.
All right. All right, so if we could put up the public comments. I believe the public seated here has the, could you put the policy? Thank you. Has the norms that we're following. Those norms follow what are in our already posted in our policy. They follow that. And so we will open it up to public if you have any questions or things. And so you will need the microphone, as you know. So Alex, if you wouldn't mind giving Pat the microphone, please name your name and where you live.
Hi, Pat Martin from Ringe. And two quick questions. One is on the warrant articles. Is there any way to write the warrant articles such that, the no means no kind of thing is not a factor? In other words, if you had co-curriculars on as a warrant article and people voted against it, is there a way to word it so that if you got grant funding, the school could continue? And so it's just tied to funding. I don't know if that's wise or not. I'm just asking the question because it would be kind of heartbreaking. I think warrant articles would pass for those things that the rest of the community uses. But, just a worry in the back of my mind. And the second thing is on that Reaching Higher New Hampshire, the Key Communities Initiative. I just want to say, if you're already doing data collection for funding fairness, it seems like maybe this would be a good time to at least submit the data and maybe let the people from working together do most of the interaction, because I think it's really going to take almost a sea change in our communities to get this through. I mean, I think every angle that we can approach this and get the community to understand that they're hurting themselves by not supporting the schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Can we answer that? I believe that it's a state thing, but maybe actually, maybe Charlie, you may. So when you have a warrant article that does not pass, I believe it's a no means no, like we can't go back to it, but I'm not sure if that's a district vote. Like I think that for some reason I'm remembering the town voted that, but I don't think it's a state thing, is it? Do you know? So you know what I'm asking? So what Pat had asked is, so let's say the warrant article, let's say we have a warrant article for adding athletics back in, and the town votes, towns say no to that. Is there a way to word it in such a way that that doesn't have to mean forever no kind of thing, or maybe there's another out, or it could be grant funded some other way, or, but I'm thinking no means no.
It does make no,
Yeah.
but you can word the warrant article such that there are options. All right. Should this article fail, blah, 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 blah. All right. You'll have another special election, or you'll be able to do something with it.
So we could in this district have a special election for something that said no? I didn't think we could.
If we word the warrant article such that the voters approve. The voters vote on a warrant article that allows certain things to happen. All right, so if. I don't know if I'm explaining myself.
Yeah,
right or
and-
not.
Well, similar to a collective bargaining agreement,
Yes,
you would have
very similar.
the collective bargaining agreement, and then you'd have, should Article 3 not pass, you give the permission to go back and renegotiate and come
Renegotiate.
back.
Yeah.
For a vote.
It's usually a separate warrant article
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
follows that one.
Somehow I thought we couldn't do it in the school district. Okay, I think I want to do more research on that. Thank you for that.
To run through DRA and to run through legal.
We'd have to talk to our attorney,
Yeah.
tell them exactly what it is we're looking for and see what can be done. Probably wouldn't be able to be done in one warrant article.
Okay, good question, Pat. Thank you. Any further public comments from the floor? All right, any public comments from the internet? Okay, thank you. All right, so there will be a second public comment session after our final projects. So we have a consent agenda with, sorry?
Sorry. At the beginning of this discussion, Ruben had suggested that it would be very helpful for us to come up with a percentage that we deem acceptable.
I thought
I thought you wanted that before Saturday, or did you want that on Saturday?
Well, I think if, through this conversation, if the board's thinking, listen, this number is like, forget what's in there for a second. I think that we agree that what we're asking for, the items that we're asking for to do the job that we want to do, is we're not asking for in excess. There may be some questions here and there on a couple positions. But in the end, it comes down to a dollar amount, and we get to this point every year, a dollar amount, and then we look at, all right, what's that dollar amount? What do we feel that we can put in front of the voters? We know what the default budget is. What's that acceptable proposed amount? Or what's the percentage that's, is likely to, that we can get behind? If you have that understanding as a board, it would help us in the next several days to be able to say, okay, based upon that information, here are some changes. Now, none of the changes are going to be great. I mean, we put back, for instance, 70,000 for paint and flooring, right? We need to do some flooring in some of the schools. We know we need to pay attention to our facilities. We had gotten to the point where you look around, this is such a clean paint job that we have here, and it makes everything look great and clean, and people come in and say, this is wonderful. Your school looks great, looks clean. That's important to have, but we at least can have that conversation. So is that 70,000, can we go without it another year? That sort of, if that's too much. There's, at times we've been able to reduce our technology. Do we have any of that we can do? We know we're not going to do it with Chromebooks. I wouldn't even attempt to do that again. Tried that, failed, not going to do it again. So we have to just figure out what we can do. What are the areas? If it's a lot of money, it means staff. So what staff are we not going to put in? What are we going to live without? What are we going to do? That sort of thing. That's where we're at this point if there are big numbers. Because we don't even have right now athletics and activities to take out. Like that's already out. So, and it's not even in the proposed. It's gonna be very challenging to turn it around if on Saturday we're like, okay, you know what? After all this discussion, we are putting forth a budget that's 7% above, which so 2%, above where the default is, which is at 5%, and go, oh, okay, now we've got to find out where that is, because we're not gonna figure out where to cut that on a Saturday. Like those are some serious conversations that would have to take place, because you can't, when cutting personnel, from you have to look at the entire system in order to see how all the dominoes are gonna fall. And we got it wrong this last time. We thought, looking at the numbers, 6th grade, that was a place we thought we could get by, and it was the wrong call. We didn't do it right, but we nonetheless did have to have that process of looking at all those positions to find out what was going to be maybe have the least negative impact. Because we have to have a plan for how it's all going to work together, how we're going to move forward.
All right. So how about this? If any board member has a suggestion on a specific decrease or increase to move forward before we get to Saturday. I think Saturday is going to be our big work session. But if any board member has a specific concern in this or need that they want to make sure is presented on Saturday and really discussed, why don't we open the board up for that?
So I'll throw out a question, I guess. So based on our default, which includes a number of things not under our control.
Yeah.
Including the 585,000 from WellCare, the VAC charge, the health insurance increase, the prior approved salary increases that are part of the collective bargaining agreements. Those things are all in the default budget, obviously. Athletics and co-curriculars are not. So I guess the question I'm going to ask is, staying bare bones, taking into account the decrease from the state of $900,000, which Chris has mentioned a couple of times. Where is our proposed at right now? What's your number? I know you've.
All right, so let's
33
let's look at the this, just so that we have the numbers. You can write them down. So this is the default. It's a 5.41% increase. It's at 32,445,150.
That was at 33.
I'm gonna go to the other one in just a second.
Oh, sorry. Thank
So
you.
that's the default,
Oh, thank you. Yeah, sorry.
and then the
I'm
proposed,
tired.
where it is right now,
Got it.
that's the one you're talking
Yeah,
about, Lisa.
sorry about that.
Yep, 33, 332, 850, and that's 3% higher. At 8.3 or 8.29%.
Okay. And that still does not include athletics or
That's
pre-K.
correct. Mhm.
Okay. Okay, well,
Or several of those items that we went over with Chris, like those last 6 positions they're not in there.
the sixth grade teacher though is back in.
We put that back in. Yep.
Okay, so our total at this point for a proposed without athletics or pre-K is 33,352,000.
32,000. Yep.
Okay, 332,000, sorry. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I want us to be careful and I know I do this all the time too, but we have to stop referring to activities as athletics. Right? Because it's so much more. It's mentoring, it's clubs, it's sports, right? So when we say athletics, people think, why are you spending so much money on athletics? But it's really
Co-curriculars
and everything.
clubs and
Yeah.
Yeah.
All those things that kids are actually getting scholarships for,
thank you for
and
that.
identifying themselves.
Yep.
I think at least from my experience, what we tend to do, in the few years that I've been here is we look at this and it all makes sense. I think we can all get behind it. And then we look at the tax impact at the last minute and then we start cutting and it's not a great process, right? And it's tends to be rushed. And I think it's important that we, start looking at that now, I think before we can come up with that number. And I think we have at least most of that information and as Carrie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I look at the proposed, so for the proposed budget, which we're looking at here, I believe, and we'll say for a $500,000 home, I think that, just so people can calculate from there. I believe, for Jaffrey, the tax impact is $935. And for Ringe, it's $540.
Roughly, yeah.
Yep. And I think for the default, so that's what we're looking at for the proposed where we're at right now. Again, a proposed that doesn't include athletics and activities and the pre-K. We're looking at $935 for Jaffrey and $540 for Ringe on a $500,000 home, approximately, right? These numbers could change, but just to give people a ballpark of what we're looking at.
Chris, are you talking about based on this current proposed? Athletics and pre-K.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's 935, 540. Without that, I'm just seeing how we normally operate. That's what we look at. It's like everything looks good. And then, I think we need to start judging what's going to be palatable for the community and what would actually pass, which I think we all want to do. I don't think we can, go through another situation where, we have a budget that doesn't pass or gets severely cut. Although there's not much we can do about controlling that. I think we need to just be sure it's a responsible impact that we can get behind. And maybe that's something to think about over the next few days, how we feel about, those numbers individually.
Do you have the default?
Yeah. For Jaffrey, it's 720 and Ringe 375. Seem right, but. Yeah.
Roughly, yeah.
So if we're taking temperatures and kind of seeing where board is leading and board is looking going forward, and seeing as, you know, in a few days, we're getting together to really finalize things. I would like the board to know that my temperature is, I've really been convinced by specifically the last two of the presentations from, activities and from special student services, that the pre-K program and the, activities programs simply aren't extra. They're absolutely integral to our academic growth and sustainability. They affect everything from attendance and higher grades to not needing as many staff, support staff, because we have a quality 4-year-old program that brings kids up so they're ready to go and ready to learn right from day one of kindergarten. They just more and more just don't feel like they should be, for me, put up to a warrant article. Like these fields that they're too big, they're too important to the program. The wedge that they would make being removed is so dramatic. I don't know how we would come back from that. I don't. And so my temperature is I would want to go with the 34,400,000 and put that before the voters. If everything looked like it did right now and we weren't going to have Saturday and nothing else was going to happen, that would be my call. So I just want to put that out there, that this is always a really big struggle at this table between what is actually best academically and for our kids and what is best for our taxpayers, me being one of them. You know, this is really, really hard to sit at this table. But you should know that that is absolutely where I'm leaning. I don't see that these are reasonable things to cut, or to put to that kind of a chance. So it's a lot of money. The number that keeps running in my head is that it's $1 million more than what we worked months to get to bare bones last year. We're asking for $1 million more this year than last year. That's doesn't, especially with this 800,000 health insurance crap, and everything else we've had to put into it. It doesn't feel like we're asking a great deal more than what we really needed last year. We've done it this year. The skin of our teeth done it, you know, but we've got to rise up. And so I don't see any growth if we don't keep them into the operating budget. So if we're looking for a temperature, that's fine. So.
I think that this budget to me looks palatable. And don't get me wrong, I think sports and extracurriculars and the preschool are all part of this. But if we put this in the budget and it doesn't pass, again, we'll be right where we were last March, cutting out stuff again. I think that we need to say, here's the budget, this is what we need to run the school, and put the other things on the warrant article, and if the voters want them, fine, the voters have spoken. We risk having this budget cut and having to revisit last March. I'm really worried about that. It's not that I don't believe I believe they belong in there, but I'm really worried about that.
I know.
It's a profound worry for me too, and I think last year after the vote, I was angry, and I felt like our schools had been disrespected, that there was a sign of disrespect. And it was. But I also understand it's a pocketbook issue that because of the way, until our state fixes the way it funds schools, the way our state's constitution says it's supposed to, we're gonna keep running into this problem. Even if people, and everybody should love our school, the pain is significant because of the burden the state puts on us, and that is, I think that's why we lost the CTE center. You know, it's just, it's hard. It's hard to pay for schools this way. It's not fair. Our kids hurt and suffer because of it, and I'm really worried about putting up a proposed budget that's a 12% increase. If we add co-curriculars and pre-K and everything back all at once.
Charlie, do you wanna?
Yeah, I'm chomping at the bit over here. I can't wait to get to Saturday because public education is changing and it's never going to be the same. No matter what we look at and say, gee, you know, this is what it should be. It's not going to be that way. We're going to have to adapt to what our legislature puts forward. All right. And I think one of the opportunities there is open enrollment. And I think what we ought to be going into is saying, look, this is in our budget, we're projecting some increased revenue from that approach. And those are the things that's going to pay for the extra things that we want to put in there. Because the alternative, never mind. That's a Saturday discussion. I'm just going to, I'm just, if we're sitting here thinking that we can go through the same thing year after year, talking about tax rates and all of that kind of stuff, okay, it's going to be a whole different world. We're going to be more concerned about what kind of investment we're making in these offerings because it's going to attract these students, okay, as opposed to, gee, we really need to put this particular thing in there or that particular thing in there. I'm rambling now, but I just,
no, it's a good
I can't express my feeling that we need to be out in front of the game and understand that the world is changing.
And I guess the world that's changing, but the funding model remains the same, and that's the difficulty.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the world can change all at once and we need a different strategy, but I think as long as our communities are paying for it, there's a significant portion that.
But they're not paying for it if they're investing in it, and that's the difference. It's not a tax, it's an investment. And why is it an investment? Because this is what you're going to get. Not, we're going to do this for your kids. We're going to do this for all kids, not only ours, but the ones, you know, in neighboring districts. I mean, you have to use it. I may be way off base, but I don't believe that we're ever going to be the same again. There's been too much change going on in Concord, and I just think that there's too many forces there that we need to look at and adapt to as opposed to trying to fight. Because I know I can go in there just like I can say, Chris, you taxpayers are paying $1 million more this year than you did last year because of the state legislature. It doesn't change their tax bill.
Mm-hmm.
So what they're going to want to see is what am I going to do to reduce my taxes? And the only thing that's going to reduce their taxes is if we get revenue to supplant what we're not getting.
Are we ready to move on to the consent agenda?
Would it be possible, we have some individuals in the audience who are tied to some of these other items, to do the field trip for CMHS first? Is that possible?
Or is the board amenable to moving an action item again?
Absolutely.
All right, why don't we move both the action items to now and do the consent agenda after? It's not as important. All right, so consent agenda, field trip, CMHS, Montreal. Let's take a look.
So this is brought to the board before. There were some comments. We got some information. I have Mr. Dustin here to be able to maybe answer some of the questions that you might have. We did get some information from the teacher.
Okay. I think my main question on this was lodging, the second to last sentence, lodging will be in a vetted hostel in Montreal where we will probably rent out most of the hostel to accommodate our group.
So the teacher shared some clarification. They would be the only group in the hostel. It only has, I think, 2 rooms, she said. Yep, there's 2 rooms in the hostel and they'd be getting both of them for the price that they have with chaperones in each space. And the hostel does provide security as well, as part of that. So she did share a link, which I can send to the board for this particular hostel. She stated that another question had been about borders being stopped at the border by ICE as a potential concern. She did share that there are a lot of school groups still traveling to and from Canada right now. There has not been any incidents of this or issues with this, and the tour company that she's using, Hummingbird Student Travel, does provide support for all the student documentation. They make sure that everything gets to ICE ahead of time and that the border crossing is smooth. So she doesn't have any concerns about that based on the current trips going out. I think those are the 2 big questions. She also did share that she's a 4th degree black belt, if that helps anybody feel comfortable about her leading a trip. But the 2 biggest things were the hostel and the ICE.
And she did have another chaperone, correct?
She has at least one other chaperone that's going to be a male, and she's got 3 individuals that she's asked. But there'll be at least one other chaperone with her, yes.
Okay.
Oh, you're going as well. Oh, great. There we go. Even 3 chaperones.
Okay. All right, could the language be changed that it's not going to be where we'll probably rent out most of the hostel? Where they're going to have, because I don't want to,
Yeah,
I would not say yes to them staying with strangers.
understood. I wouldn't either. I agree with that.
Okay.
Why is there 0 for the expected transportation?
That's all built. So the expected transportation cost is usually what's funded out of the district's transportation line. So that's $0 because that's been built into the expected learner cost instead.
All right. So does the board approve this? Any further questions on it? So let's do a vote, and we will say it is a vote for the amended language that the hostel will be exclusive to the group. That is the stipulation. Okay, so all in favor of approving the amended field trip? Need a motion.
I will make that motion.
Thank you, sorry. I'm getting tired and the game's half an hour in.
I will second that motion.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Passes 7-0-0. Thank you. And the next action item is a waiver of facility fees for the Jaffrey Cub Scouts to use the JGS gym November 13th through May 29th for their Cub Scout meetings, I'm assuming. Is there any questions on this one? Cool. And all in favor? Sorry, motion?
Move that we approve this use by the Cub Scouts.
Thank you, John. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Christine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, passes 7-0-0. Consent agenda, we have manifests for, well, I think it's the, I'll say, right, the personnel for 491,932,077 cents. And we have another one for $199. We have payroll, we have, or maybe we have nothing for payroll, that was probably in it. Budget transfer from salaries to professional services instruction. So I'm assuming that's from a position we couldn't fill to contracted services. Yeah. And then we have a donation from Hannaford Health Schools for $543. That is very generous. Thank you, Hannaford. And that's going to go to Conant Middle School. And we have no nominations. We have a stipend list. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, John. Is there a second? Thank you, Sandy. Any discussion on the consent agenda? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. For our minutes of November 3rd, please take a look, make sure you are here. Is there a motion to accept the minutes from the November 17th?
Yes, that's.
Yeah, so if you open them, it says November 3rd. If we could open that one. Okay, this is actually November 17th.
Yes.
Okay.
So didn't you want to make a change to the link, one of these?
Yes, so I don't think it was this one though. Was it this one? So are they both hang on, let's go back to the agenda. November 22nd. Yep, so the November 22nd is the Saturday one. And so that's when we're going to, and then instead of November 3rd, you meant November 17th? Great, Wendy, thank you. All right, so November 17th. Is there a motion to accept these minutes?
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Christine. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you for that. And any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, so even though it says November 3rd, that was for the 17th. And then if we open up November 22nd, there is a change that I would like to make. When number 1 for the motion, let's scroll down just a little bit. On number 1 for the motion to seal the non-public minutes, I needed to state the reason for them to be sealed. And that reason was it's per our new policy. Give me a second. I just want to get the language right for you. 8 minutes. Policy BEC. Give me a second. I had it right here. Yep, not there. Okay, I believe it was policy BEC. So it's the brand new policy that we had updated on the protocols for non-public minutes. They needed the reason. So there's more to the language. I'll find it, but it's basically they were sealed for purposes of reputation. So that language needed to be added. So is there a motion to accept the amended minutes from November 22nd?
So moved.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Aye.
Thank you. So that passes 6-0-1. Thank you for that. And any discussion items for the board? Any further public comments?
Nick L. Jaffrey. When you were talking about that 34,447,126 to include athletics, if you included the athletics, Chris, can you give a breakdown of what the implications would be for the taxes for Jaffrey and Ringe? Is there a formula that you use, or how did you come up with those numbers?
Yeah,
Yes, please go ahead.
the only thing I had was the tax rate for the default and the proposed. I didn't have the impact of the tax rate for that. Probably figure it out, or Carrie could probably do it.
Yeah, I just shut down my computer. I could put it back on, but I know that we presented it. One of the budget meetings, what the estimated tax impact would be when Ruben had it on.
Oh, for the warrant articles?
Yeah, so it should be linked. But I can reboot this back up.
And then I get a second question, just so that I understand, and hopefully others, but that 900,000 that's not coming from the state, is that? I guess I don't understand where that's displayed in the budget. Like, is there a reduction in any of the line items? Or is it just,
It's
Reduced revenue,
Reduce revenue.
sorry.
thank you.
So if we put in, so I guess you have the tax impact for the 33, correct? 33 million?
Yeah, yeah.
So these were the estimates for the two items. The athletics activities.
So it's at like $150.
So
Do you want to know it by a $500,000 house like Chris?
Yes, please.
So I'm just gonna round. Chris was pretty much rounding. For the athletic and co-curricular would be about $150 on a $500,000 house. And 150, I'm sorry, that was Jaffrey, 115 for Ringe. And the pre-K, it would be about 115 for Jaffrey and 85 for Ringe.
Thank you. Any online public comments? Okay, thank you for that. And board matters?
Did Nick have it?
Sorry. Nick,
No.
yes, okay, Nick, thanks. Board matters, the policy meeting has been postponed from Thursday the 4th to Thursday the 11th at 4:30 PM. Any other meetings that have happened that we should be discussing? Okey dokey. Good. All right. Then does the board wish to make any motions?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, Christine, thank you. Is there a second on a motion to adjourn?
Second.
John seconded. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstain? Passes 7-0-0. Thank you, everybody. See you Saturday morning at 9:30.
Do you want a non-public at time?
No, I think we're good. No. We can do it after if we need to. Everybody hear that? No non-public on Saturday morning first. We'll just come for the meeting.
Nick. Chris has got that pulled up, looks like,